Hi, good evening, everyone. I am going to share with you the online module for for the virtual cases that I'm working on. So my goal is to hopefully have 3 of these completely done, aiming for 2 to 3. So what you're seeing here right now, this is the module that I created using Qualtrics. Qualtrics is a survey tool that's available to university students and staff. However, our department also uses it to create tests, and I have used it for I am using it for my capstone project to create interactive modules based on the essentials of clinical medicine, medical and trauma scenarios. So this is just the actual behind the scenes stuff of Qualtrics. This isn't actually what a person taking or participating in the module would see. I just wanted to show you how I had everything laid out. So now we'll actually walk through the actual module. So right now, there's still a lot of work that I need to do on this. I still need to add some of the branching paths, and I have to figure out the scoring. I'm working with a friend of mine who is a trauma nurse to help me put the content together, and I still need to run this by my education director. But this is right now the path we're going to take is what would be ideally what you would want the students to do. The idea is not so much that this is a test, but it's more so to get the students thinking as a doctor would. And one thing to remember that this is meant for first and second year medical students. So the students taking this or who would be using this wouldn't necessarily have a ton of clinical experience. So let's just walk through the module here, and you can see what I've been working on. So just to begin here, we'll just fill out what is your last name. I'll use mine. Student ID, we'll just put any number on there. And right now I have it set up so that there's no validations and you don't actually have to answer anything. Ultimately, when I would actually finalize this and roll it out, I would make some of these questions mandatory to answer. And I'll just use my email address. That's my home email address. And so this is just kind of basic information, and then whether or not the person taking this module has any simulation experience. Since these are first and second year medical students, the answer is most likely going to be none. And now we start the actual module. So this is as I mentioned in my paper and in my video, this is much like a choose your own adventure book, but for medical students. So we can see here the start of the case. You walk into the entrance of the emergency department for your first shift of the week. You're scheduled from noon to midnight. The first several hours are relatively quiet, with no real emergencies to speak of. At 1700 hours, Nurse Tucker informs you of a patient that was brought in by his wife. Nurse Tucker is actually my friend Emily Tucker, who is a nurse who was helping me with this as well. So right here, since I entered my last name initially, it'll show up here. Dr. Sanchez, we have a 50-year-old patient named Mr. Bob Rebadow. He was brought in by his wife Linda. He has been complaining of chest pain and shortness of breath. And then here we see Mr. Rebadow, the poor patient who is visibly in pain. You enter the patient's room and meet Mr. Rebadow. He looks visibly uncomfortable, and his breathing is rapid and labored. He is hunched over and clutching his chest. And so now we get to the first path that you can take here. So what action should you take next? So see, here are the 3 options. Obtain vital signs, OPQSTR, which is onset, provocation, quality, severity, time, and radiation. And then ABCs are airway, breathing, and circulation. So in an actual scenario, the very first thing we would have the students do is take ABCs, so airway, breathing, and circulation. So we'll pick that. And again, we're just picking what is the ideal path here. And from there we go to, it takes us to the ABC section. So there's a picture of someone taking the radial pulse. And then you notice Mr. Ribadow is experiencing I don't actually know how to say that word, but it's basically rapid breathing. His breaths are short and labored, and you can clearly feel a strong radial pulse. What action do you take next? So in this case, we would want the students to take the vital signs. And then we go to vitals. And now we have a very crude drawing of a vital sign monitor that I put together using Keynote. And then as well as the vitals up here, so they're a little bit easier to read. Basically blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen, and respirations. And so medical students, based on this information, should be able to pick the appropriate next course of action. So in this case, NRP mass is going to be the correct answer, and that's based on this reading right here, the SpO2. It's basically the amount of oxygen. So you can see that they have lower oxygen. That should be closer to 98, 99. So NRP mask, which is a oxygen mask. And now I just kind of picked out some random pictures. I would actually change this to a much bigger, much easier to read, or much easier to see picture, but this is what an NRP mask would look like applying it to a patient. And so now once they pick that action, you get the text. After administering oxygen, you notice a change in Mr. Ribadow's SpO2 reading. Mr. Ribadow's breathing appears to improve, but it's still rapid and shallow. And here are the vital signs post NRP mask. So his oxygen increased from 92 to 97%. So he is getting better, but still not great. His blood pressure is still extremely high, and his heart rate, for a resting heart rate, is still very high as well. So then what do you do next? So the next course of action would be to take, we go to OPQSTR, which again is onset, provocation, quality, radiation, severity, time, and patient history, which essentially is, what happened. And so this gives you a little backstory on the patient, Mr. Ribadow. You can see he was shoveling his driveway prior to being brought in by his wife Linda. I have a couple typos in there, but again, this is still a very rough draft. Severity on a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. Ribadow is an 8 out of 10, so he's in quite a lot of pain. His pain is not really radiating anywhere. It's staying on the left side of his chest, and he's been feeling this way for about 1 hour. Medication, patient history, he's got a history of hypertension, and the last thing he ingested was coffee. And so again, based on this, the medical students should know what to do next, although I added some kind of funny answers here. So the obvious answer here of what to do next is order a 12 lead. You're obviously not going to take a coffee break during the middle of an emergency, and I don't know, maybe some students will pick a new career and think this sucks, but we'll see. All right, so order the 12 lead. And so 12 lead, that's basically electrode placement here, shown in this picture, and then this is the actual 12 lead the EKG reading. I have no idea what this means, but again, a medical student ought to know what this means. And then, so based on this reading, what do you notice? Actually, I meant to write what is the most prescient. So I'm going to write ST elevation. And again, I know this because I have access to the cases, not because I myself can read this. Alright, sorry about that interruption there. I had a little glitch in the quiz here, in the module rather. So back to the final answer here. So based on the final answer, the diagnosis, or the correct diagnosis, should be the patient is having a heart attack. The best course of action would be to order nitroglycerin to hopefully stop them having a heart attack. Click here, and then we're done. And so we scored 100% because I came up with the quiz and I came up with the answers. So As you can see, there's still quite a bit of work to be done. However, this is the general idea or the general flow where I want to pose a case using visuals, so it's a little bit more visually appealing than simply just reading through text. I've done some voice recordings as well of kind of rapid breathing and moaning, which I would also like to include in the modules as well. So I'll go back and edit those in once I have the format down. But yeah, this is basically what I currently have. I think, although again, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there's a lot of potential here to make this engaging, um, and certainly still a few more challenges ahead. But thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thanks.